we're going to look at John 3:16 and 17. And on first glance, you might sit there and go, hang on a second. This is the classic "For God so loved the world." And I just want to read it to you with a bit of a different thought in our head. And that is that in this particular passage, the Greek use of the word world is cosmos. Now, if any of you are growing cosmos in or around your gardens at the moment, you might be sitting there going, they are still flowering. They might be rather lanky. Mine are about 1.5 meters tall, and they're still flowering. But this use of the word cosmos feels so much bigger than the use of the word world. It feels so much more inclusive, so much more covering, and somehow draws in the whole of creation. So let me read these couple of verses to you. For God so loved the cosmos that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the cosmos to condemn the cosmos, but to save the cosmos through him. Let me read that again. For God so loved the cosmos that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. For God did not send his Son into the cosmos to condemn the cosmos, but to save the cosmos through him.
Where's the passage from, please?
We're in John 3:16 and 17, the Gospel of John. And sometimes just switching a word, just altering the foci of the lens, extends our understanding, or maybe grows or increases our understanding. I've always understood that God's purposes, his salvific purpose, the whole point of salvation was for everything. It's for everything, the whole of creation, of which we are a part. And this idea that every star and every planet and every galaxy, that every snail and every bug and every worm, that every plant and every tree, every river, every stream, every ocean, every part would be saved. But more than that, and bearing in mind this is an almighty God, the almighty God, who doesn't particularly need to call us into this, but he delights to call us into partnership with him for this work. It's fuller and more complete because he calls us, his creation, into working with him, the creator, so that all creation might be saved. So this concept that God did not send his Son into the cosmos to condemn the cosmos, but save the cosmos through him, through Jesus, is then through Jesus and including us. We're drawn into partnership with the Almighty through the person of Jesus and the work of the Holy Spirit. And for us in our particular focus here as Creation Care Champions, that is then to serve and to work with and to be part of a people who seek the reflourishing of the whole of God's creation. And if you were a microbiologist, you might be looking at enzymes in watercourses. And if you were a farmer, you might be looking at how your soil behaves. If you're a parent, you might look at how to raise your children so they understand better their impact on the world. And if you're just like me, a normal and ordinary of this place, you might be searching for anything you can, be it your travel patterns, your heating patterns, when you turn the church heating on or not. But all of this is contributing to a saving of God's very beautiful creation, our world, our home, his creation. So I'll leave that with you. Anybody want to throw a reflection, an observation, a word, anybody else want to share into that mix? You're very welcome.
With your use of cosmos, it's even more extraordinary that God should send his only Son to a tiny, tiny speck called the Earth within that cosmos. So if you didn't feel special before, that should make you feel even more special.
Bless you. I love that. Thank you. I'll probably use it at some point, so permission. Yeah. Anybody else want to share any other reflection or observation there? Well, I'm going to draw that part to close with a short prayer. So let's just take a moment. So we do thank you for that, Father, that we are precious to you, that you did come here, fully human, fully divine, God made man, walked this earth, understood the soil, spoke to the farmers, walked with the poor and the wealthy alike, fed the hungry. Would you bless us in our conversations today? Would you encourage us as we seek to be creation care champions wherever we are? Would you draw teams together? Give us a creation care family to work amongst. And we do pray for the reflourishing of your very good creation, our home, this earth. Amen.
Right. Thank you very, very much for letting me come along and join you this morning. It's been a real eye-opener listening to the conversation so far. Yeah, a real privilege to come and to address the Creation Care Network. I am with Christian Aid, and I have got some ideas to share with you for the first part of my time with you this morning, and then I would like to open it up to discussion and to hopefully plan and brainstorm with you a little bit to make sure we are all linking up wherever possible and supporting each other in the very interconnected work that we seem to be pursuing. So I am Katrina Musgrave, and I represent Christian Aid across Devon and Cornwall. I think it would be fair to say that Christian Aid has truly become part of my way of life, because I have done a whole host of jobs for over 20 years now, and I've had the privilege of visiting Christian Aid partners in the Philippines, in Sierra Leone, and in Nicaragua. And really, everything I have done has just made me more and more passionate about what Christian Aid does and how we go about it. You're probably well aware that at Christian Aid, we believe that everyone is equal in the sight of God, and we work to ensure that one day all people will live a life of dignity, equality, and justice, free from poverty. But of course, right now, as we've been discussing, there is a major block in the road to achieving this goal. The theme for One World Week 2022, which has just come to a close last week, that theme was, of course, also addressing the global climate crisis. And Christian Aid fully endorses the fact that right now, climate change is undermining and, in fact, undoing progress and development in the poorest parts of our world. Really, it's that sense of injustice that runs to the heart of our work and our campaigning on climate change. Since the early 2000s, Christian Aid has been campaigning on the effects of the climate crisis because we know two things. First, that the climate crisis disproportionately affects people in poverty, as they're often more reliant on the natural environment for their lives and livelihoods. But also, while people in poverty are those who are most affected by the climate crisis, they have often done least to cause it. Again, that huge sense of injustice, that inequality of who created the problem and who is suffering from the effects of global warming. Most recently, I'm sure many of you followed the tragic situation in Pakistan. Nearly 1,400 people have died, more than 1 million people homeless in the floods that have submerged 1/3 of the entire country. The United Nations Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, who we hear on the news an awful lot at the moment, but he visited the flood-ravaged Pakistan, and in his words, he had never seen such climate carnage. He's obviously traveled far and wide and witnessed a huge amount of the chaos of recent years, but he said, "I have simply no words to describe what I have seen today." He hopes that his visit to Pakistan will galvanize a response, and he puts a figure of about $30 billion on the cost of helping Pakistan to recover. And he knows that that recovery will require huge global support. The government of Pakistan is also calling for that sense of international assistance and recognition. And you will have seen the DEC, the Disasters Emergency Committee, did respond with an appeal, and Christian Aid has been supporting that. Sadly, these floods in Pakistan, they were just one of many, many natural disasters that are taking place around the world in recent years as a result of global warming. You'll also be well aware, I'm sure, of what a fast-moving, ever-changing political scene we have in the UK at the moment. Who will or won't be our Prime Minister? Who will or won't be going to the COP27 on our behalf? But what is absolutely clear now more than ever is that we, people such as yourself, myself, those of us who care so passionately about this cause, we need to keep campaigning. Not least because we recognize that as Christians, we are called to follow in the just and radical footsteps of Jesus. We are called to love our neighbors, to honor the most marginalized, and to stand up against injustice and seek that transformational change in our world. Just then, when Ben was talking to us about the cosmos, I did nearly chip in that also when you were all reflecting about asking your PCCs and your churches and the church meetings that you're part of to put creation care higher up that agenda, to bring it into the prayers, to make it part of the fabric of your church life. And at our North Devon Climate Justice Day, as I referenced, held up in Broughton with Christian Aid support on Saturday, a minister did say, I have been so reminded of the fact that creation care is not some add-on, even when I get around to it. It is core to the very tenet of my faith, core to every aspect of my faith. And I found that really illuminating to hear a minister saying that as well on Saturday. And this message is very much at the core of what Christian Aid's campaign, our most recent campaign, is calling for. Ben says this is the month to take action with regard to your group, and definitely we would be standing alongside you there, because our campaign is saying, please rise up and pay up. It is time for the polluters to pay up. Wealthiest nations, the wealthiest nations of our world have been scandalously slow to acknowledge the costs of the climate crisis on the poorest nations. If you take Pakistan as an example again, wealthier countries are morally responsible. This is in Guterres's words, his own words again. He very much puts that moral emphasis on this issue. Wealthier countries are morally responsible for helping developing countries like Pakistan to recover, to adapt, to build resilience. And he adds, you know, this will be happening again in the future. This isn't a one-off. We need to help these countries. The injustice, again, you know, the point I'm making of who has created global warming and who is suffering. Pakistan is responsible for less than 1% of global greenhouse gas emissions, less than 1%. And yet it's 8th on a list that's been put together by a charity called German Watch, a list that says which country is going to be most vulnerable to the extreme weather caused by climate change. And you will see those who have emitted least are suffering first and worst. And it's this injustice that we want to put the spotlight on. We want to ask everyone in the UK to become increasingly aware that it's those who are already experiencing loss and damage, whose lives and livelihoods are being destroyed, and yet who have contributed least to the problem of the climate crisis in the beginning. They are the ones who truly need our help and assistance right now. And to convey this through someone else's eyes, I'd really like to share a short film clip with you right now. I'm not sure if anyone here had the opportunity to see Thank You for the Rain. There were 2 film showings, one in Truro, one in Falmouth. It's not, I'm sad to say, it's not on Amazon or Netflix yet, but it is an incredibly powerful film. I'm going to share a short clip right now, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about it. Bear with me 1 second.
That's okay.
Thank you.
When the rains
Yeah.
fell, every farmer feels like running away.
Christine, what can you say about the rain today?
No, I think when we look on the sky, it seems as if it will rain soon.
Are you happy with it?
I'm very happy with it because it's the mother of all living things.
You can be in bad terms with your family members, hearing that you have nothing for their bellies. Unfortunately, that is a very big problem to some people and to me.
We big people, amen. Kuni wati asumbe. Lakini nina mwezi tamizi tamemana suita wakela medi change. We kwatha yola wagwatiala nongina withie wikite sai vandu wazi ngisa kugwa kuna atialela nengutia miti ya nondo mana. No mujira wane beba ngona umwe balo.
Has this ever happened before?
The other season we were crying, no rain. Now we are talking of flood. Everything is being contradicting.
It's crunch time at the COP21 in Paris. The objective and requirements are clear. We need a universal agreement on climate.
I'm going for my family's future. This is my chance to share my story. The story that I have is an alarm to everybody.
They have polluted our atmosphere for 200 years, and their wealth is based upon our poverty.
What are the qualities of a good father? Who is a good leader?
Are you nervous?
No. Yeah, I'm not scared in any way. I'm ready.
Thank you very much for bearing with me there. I can't encourage you enough really to take the time to go on to, if you just Google "thank you for the rain." Oh my goodness, hang on, what's going on now? Sorry everybody. Where have you gone? Yes, if you just Google "thank you for the rain," and what you'll be taken direct to the website that was set up between Julia and Kasulu. You saw briefly there the farmer Kasulu from Kenya, and his humanity, his approach to his community, the life he leads and the impact that climate change has had upon it, and his journey to COP21 and the failure of those talks and the failure of people to respond to the truth that he's sharing breaks my heart every single time I watch it. And it's a really powerful tool if you can get groups of family, groups of church together to watch it. Christian Aid had the license for a year. It was quite a costly endeavor, but we did that to share it with supporters and churches last year. Now we've chosen not to renew the license, to continue to campaign in other ways, which I'll be sharing in a moment. But please do use that film as a tool for debate. And yeah, go on, Ben.
What I'll say, friends, is we'll make sure we include a link of it in the newsletter when we release it next week. So we'll give you an avenue to follow that through, and maybe see if we can find some other resources. But get groups together in your churches and do something locally. It'd be a really powerful way of drawing teams together as well.
Yeah, definitely. And if your people, one of you did mention about the church congregation not being that big yet in the flesh back in the church, we did hold Zoom showings. So, you know, if you're all up with the tech, we have had as many as 80 people watch it through a shared screen. You know, one person hosts the film, you all have a Zoom link and you all watch the film and then can debate afterwards. And it's a really, really hard-hitting film that's been around for about 5-6 years now, but is growing with its momentum and is still being shared internationally. And I think there's no way that you can fail to see human stories like that without being so impacted about the natural disasters that are taking place. Too much rain, too little rain, typhoons, hurricanes, assailing communities around the world. We saw the terror caused by heat waves across Europe this summer, far closer to home. And out in East Africa right now, the worst drought in over 40 years is pushing millions of people into famine. And I must admit that whilst Ukraine managed to capture hearts and minds and airspace and TV time very, very quickly, the climate-related disaster, you know, the drought driving people towards famine, has remained a far more silent crisis in East Africa. And I really would encourage you all to use that as a case study as well, both to mobilize financial support in your churches to get people supporting the appeal, but also as a demonstration of how climate-related disasters are undoing life and development in the poorest parts of our world. So to continue with my thread about rising up and paying up and polluters paying up, this really is where Christian Aid is saying, for now, let's put the spotlight on the fact that we must ask for an international loss and damage fund for the countries and the polluters that have done the most to cause the climate crisis, to now help people recover when disaster strikes. People such as Kasulu, who we've just been talking about in Kenya through that film. An international fund, when you hear this phrase loss and damage was very much an issue for COP26 last year. It's definitely on the agenda for this year, which is great. But as I'll share with you in a brief film again in a minute, it's all words. There is not enough action yet. So we need this fund because it would help towards rebuilding homes flattened by floods and cyclones. It would enable people to relocate when rising sea levels make it impossible to stay where they are. It would help people who can no longer farm because the rains have stopped in consecutive years, very much what we've just seen in Kenya. Again, the news covering Pakistan showed absolute devastation of farmers' livelihoods, and they need to retrain and to find alternatives that can resist that kind of environmental damage. And finally, for governments to think about the rebuilding of roads, of bridges, of hospitals and schools, everything that has been lost and damaged as a result of the crisis. So the biggest problem is that this fund does not exist yet. We really at Christian Aid are urging you to take this opportunity, the time that TAL is now with the coming together of the COP27 talks, you know, that's going to be taking place next week. Thank goodness we do know now that Rishi Sunak will be going out to join those talks, which is obviously very, very good news. Diabolical to think that we weren't going to be represented in that way, and he is now going, and we need to put the pressure on our local MPs, to put the pressure up to government level, that this loss and damage finance must become a reality. Denmark has stepped up to the mark and has said this is absolutely the only moral option for us to financially contribute to this loss and damage fund. But as of yet, it's very much a lone voice. And I would like to show you something now, which Christian Aid prepared for just a few days ago, but as I've mentioned, the speed with which the UK political scene has been changing meant that Christian Aid was all set with this social media video, which I'm about to show to you now, and then with Liz Truss standing down on the very day that we were about to release our campaign video, we had to make some subtle changes. But I think it's a really engaging way to get across the message of loss and damage. It's very short, and I'd love you, again, everything that I share today I can share with you. It's a quick way to spread the news to other people as well. So bear with me 1 second. I would like to think I'm still on share sound. Let's have a go. Here we go. So can you see my screen? And Ben, let me know if there's any problem with the volume. Done it again. Hang on.
We need to step up. I'm determined. We should not give in.
I am not the UK Prime Minister. I am Vanessa Nakate, a climate activist. I have borrowed her to get an important subject onto the agenda. It should have been on the agenda of the climate talks last year, and it should be on the agenda every week until action is taken. It's called loss and damage. Let me explain. Over 200 years, the industrialized world has become rich at the increasing cost of others. People in countries like mine are losing their homes, livelihoods, and increasingly their lives. Flooding, extreme heat, storms, and droughts are accelerating, all because of the climate crisis. This summer, the UK saw a test of the devastation that the climate crisis can bring to our lives. In the global south, we've been dealing with devastation for years on a more terrifying scale. And when disaster strikes, there is no support. We believe polluters should compensate for their actions. It's time that governments across the world set up a fund to pay for the loss and damage caused by climate change. We are hacking the agenda, and we'll keep doing it until governments and polluters take responsibility for this injustice. So join us and sign the petition. Let's hack the agenda.
I found it very moving that as I drove away from Braunton on Saturday, having shared that video with the 50 assembled activists for that climate justice talk, Vanessa, oh, done it again, I'm so sorry. Hang on. Oh. Right. Sorry. Can you all hear me okay?
Fine.
Thank you so much. Yes, as I drove away from Braunton, Radio 4 was interviewing or playing an interview with Vanessa, who you just heard then. You heard Vanessa hacking the agenda just before Liz Truss, or the very day Liz Truss stood down as our Prime Minister. Vanessa is a Ugandan activist who has teamed up with Christian Aid to help us spread the message of the climate crisis and of how people can respond and of the need for a loss and damage fund. And she came across so well on Radio 4, and perhaps you will have been hearing things like that too. And this message will be filtering down of why it's so essential for us to step up with a loss and damage fund. I think it's very fitting with this idea that as a group, you are turning to action. Equally, the One World Week theme was "It's our world, let's take action." So Christian Aid is very much wanting to respond to this, wanting to help you with how you think about taking action in your churches, with your PCC, with your local community groups, with your Sunday schools, And so what we've done is to prepare an action pack, and very much, hold on one second. I think, no, I'm going to, yes, hang on. I can't decide when to show you something. I'm going to show you an image so you know what I'm going on about with this. Hold on one sec. I hoped, had we been meeting in person, I would have had a prayer person ready for you all right now to give to you. But instead, I'm going to show you an image and ask you to make your own prayer person. So with this church activity pack that Christian Aid has created is on our website, and you can download it to use very much as an interactive resource with your churches. Hold on, so you're seeing my screen again. Can you all see this page? It says creating your prayer person. Rise up, pay up, prayer people. It's time to pay up for loss and damage. Are you, where have you gone? Can you hear me, Ben?
I'm on mute. Yes, I can see it. I hope everyone else can see it.
You're not seeing the page with my...
No, we are seeing it. We can see it.
Excellent. Okay. So just take a look. Basically, you can see the gist of it here is a gingerbread man, but we are calling that the cutout of a human being, because at Christian Aid, the point of this church pack is to very much remind people that it's human life at the center of the climate crisis, lives and livelihoods that are being lost all around the world as we speak. So for a moment, I'm going to play a piece of music, and if you wouldn't mind just finding a piece of paper, something you have to hand, have a go at drawing your own little gingerbread man person with a couple of arms and a couple of legs. And then, doesn't matter, this is my rudimentary example, have a go at drawing your person. And as you listen to this piece of music, I'd like you to think, please, whether it's a reflection, whether it's an action or a prayer, a lament, something you would like to put on your person about loss and damage, the people at the heart of the climate crisis. So I'm just going to play music for a couple of moments to give us a chance to reflect on this. Share a little bit while we're thinking and praying.
I have a voice, you have a voice, we have a voice, and when we sing together, a line is drawn, and hope reborn. This is the song of kingdom come. I have a voice, you have a voice, we have a voice. When we sing together, a line is drawn and hope reborn. This is the song of kingdom come. We heard the cries of distant neighbors, the dispossessed, the refugee, and God's command to feed the hungry and set them free, and set them free. We heard the word, the new commandment, and we reclaimed the prophet's call. Love the world without condition. God's love for all. God's love for all. I have a voice. You have a voice. We have a voice. When we sing together, the line is drawn and hope reborn. This is the song of kingdom come, a reckless love that knows no borders, that speaks the truth to those in power, shines a light on cruel indifference. This is God's hour. This is God's hour. When we will stand against injustice with all who live against the grain, until their poverty is over and love shall reign, and love shall reign. I have a voice, you have a voice, we have a voice. When we sing together, the line is drawn and hope reborn. This is the song, song of kingdom come.
Excuse me, I was really struggling there. I thought it was too much to share at all, but each line I find so compelling and so, you know, speaking truth to power and shining the light on cruel indifference. And I kept thinking, in a minute I'll end it, in a minute I'll end it. But again, I every time I hear that, I hear something new and it speaks to me in a new way. And I think it is a really beautiful bringing together of everything we're here to talk about today. So I would encourage you to share that as well. I hope in those moments you were able to think about your loss and damage prayer or reflection, and possibly to scribble something down on your prayer person. I do love the idea of this being a prayer from the people for the people. Very much the idea is not to leave your person alone, your person at home on your pad of paper, but to actually, if you've done this in a church and you've got a community, a congregation, all preparing people prayers, then at minimum you could hopefully put together a display, make it as visual as possible for passers-by to start thinking, what's this about? Paying up for loss and damage, what does that mean? What's that got to do with the climate crisis? And it starts to cause a stir and a conversation. Even better, you get photos of that display and of some of the prayers, and with links that I share, you can add that to an online congregation of Christian Aid churches and supporters up and down the country, sharing their images and building momentum that way. And then I must admit, the most hard-hitting thing you could do with your people prayers, and perhaps with a giant cutout of a human being as well, who is you know, the focus of this, the humans at the heart of loss and damage, would be to make an appointment with your local MP. You fantastically, you represent the breadth of Cornwall here today. I was delighted at the geographical spread of people here. I don't have a lot of luck when I try and engage with our local Conservative MPs, I must admit. Wendy's shaking her head. We tried very hard to get Cherilyn coming along to our climate justice event that's happening on the 12th of November. We tried equally hard. Cherilyn wouldn't come to our film showing of Thank You for the Rain about a year ago. Equally, Selene Saxby was too busy to make it to the Braunton Day of Activism on Saturday. So we're going to have to take this message to the MPs if the MPs won't come to us, I'm afraid. So in a moment, when we come to discussing a bit of an activism plan, taking the message of loss and damage and our people prayers to our MPs is a very tangible thing we'd like to see happening. I'm conscious it's 11:30. I have got one more sort of summing up film, which really, really drives to the importance of loss and damage. And I think if you don't mind, because Ben, I need to wrap up at 11:45, don't I, latest?
Yeah, thereabouts. We need a few minutes to do notices and just come into land, really.
Okay. So if I share just one more film, and then I've got a prayer that I'd like to share to close, and then I really would like us to discuss a few things. I've got a few dates to share. So I'll just have one more sharing attempt, because this, again, I think you'll really, really want to let others see when you're getting the message across of loss and damage. with me 1 second.
And Katrine, we can share all of these with the network through our newsletter later, can't we?
Yes, thank you very
Brilliant.
much. That would be
Perfect.
brilliant.
So we'll make sure you're all fully resourced with these.
I've shared my screen with you, and I haven't, don't know what you're going to see here. This one I didn't have quite ready. Hang on. No. If this takes too long, I will. Because I opened it all last night and then diligently shut my computer down totally. Hang on 1 sec. Here we go. Here we go. Oh, no. Oh, I really. Oh, yes. Hang on. I'm going to have to admit there that I have made an error. I dropped it into a PowerPoint because I am going to share some PowerPoint images with you, but I haven't got it on my screen quick enough and ready enough. So the final kind of summing up of loss and damage, it's made by another charity. I'm going to share that in the newsletter, and instead I will open up this PowerPoint now. Sorry, I guess I had it all open and ready, and then I've closed a few too many things down. So bear with me 1 second. Thank you, Ben. Screen share. I'll go back into screen share. I must admit, I have 2 screens. Are you seeing just my slides, or have you got all the backup stuff as well?
We can see your PowerPoint presentation with the, but not in slide view. So we can see your other slides, and we can see your main slide.
Okay. Now, can you just see my slide?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, the thought that this is being recorded is filling me with joy. Okay, so I'm going to circulate the video I was referring to a minute ago, which just really sums up and drives home the message of loss and damage, which by now, if you weren't already, I hope you're feeling thoroughly fired up about and starting to perhaps question, what can we be doing here in the UK? What can we be doing in our churches to make sure that we do rise up and pay up? And I've started to tell you a little bit about this church activity pack, and you hopefully have one of these prayer people in front of you right now. The pack is really self-explanatory, would enable you to feel even more equipped to talk about loss and damage. Perhaps you could either ask to run a short session on this yourself, or you could share it with a minister or a church leader, or perhaps the Sunday school youth group type setting I was talking about. So there's plenty of information in there to let you come up with your own display, as it suggests here: church service, small groups, children and youth groups. I'm delighted that several of you have asked for the Global Neighbours information that I mentioned in the chat. That's the Christian Aid linked with the C of E, the Church of England, came up with an award scheme a few years ago, an accreditation to help schools that are progressing with their social justice and their environmental approach as well. And this could really link in with that. You know, if you've got schools that are willing to have people in to do an assembly, or to just use information that will add to their own curriculum, that's the lovely factor that's very much supporting the curriculum requirements anyway, looking at climate change and the climate crisis. So I'd encourage you to use it far and wide, to link all the people together, to try to make a really visual, hard-hitting thing with your people prayer. I can support with press releases as well. You know, if as groups you get things going, you've got good images, then we've got a volunteer who does lots of our press work in the Southwest, and it would be great to get it into the paper as well. This is an example from last year's COP. Do you remember thousands and thousands of boats were sent up to Glasgow? And this is, you know, a lovely visual showing what could be done, this time with the People's Prayer, to engage people and to engage politicians. Also, I've been hinting at how to get involved locally and how to be part of the Talking Climate Justice tour that's going on up and down the country. I've mentioned that last Saturday, North Devon had 50 people gathering in Braunton. Well, on the 12th of November, at All Saints, thank you, Rosie, at All Saints in Higher Town, Truro, from 10:30 until 1 o'clock. We will be meeting there. Everyone is invited. It's a totally free event, open to all. It will have 50% of the morning addressing a kind of panel element, a conversation led by the people whose names you can see on the screen now. Very, very grateful to the Bishop, to Hugh Nelson, to Geoff Phipps, to Ruth Gripper, Oliver Baines and Jane Kirkham. As you will see, we're sadly lacking a, we are lacking a Conservative name here, but I truly hope amongst this group we will get a really inspiring debate going with the floor. Just to let you know, it's very much an opportunity for your voices to be heard and for your questions to be asked. On Saturday in Braunton, it became really dynamic the minute questions were taken from the floor. So do please come to the event ready to ask your questions, put your statements forward, whether it be to do with how your church, everything you've raised this morning, from the smallest issue of relevance to your church and your congregation about how you're seeking climate justice locally, but also up to what are we doing internationally in terms of loss and damage and the climate fund as well. So a whole plethora of questions and issues. First with the panel debate, then after delicious coffee and cake, we'll break up into small groups, and that'll be much more of a strategizing opportunity to put down what are we doing, what are the biggest blockers to what we're doing locally in Cornwall, and how can we support and work together better in the future on climate justice. This is just a really tangible thing I wanted to share. Again, quickly, I will share the link to this petition. As you can see, just over 8,000 signatures so far, calling on our Prime Minister to take this issue far, far more seriously. And if you could share that petition, that'd be wonderful. A summing up really of the fact that we're calling for this international fund to be created to pay for climate related loss and damage. We need the UK government to back it, to back the international fund, and we need the UK government to persuade other countries, and that's where the timing is so significant. Any emails and letters you could send immediately within the next few days to have impact before the COP, to put pressure on the UK to use its power at the COP to influence others, would be really meaningful. And then I've put this in here as well, because when planning for the 12th of November day with Ben and with Ellie, the feeling amongst us, our reaction to the level of indifference that was coming from the most recent leadership towards the climate crisis, their approach to fracking, their approach to the green policies that had started to gain traction and to be taken quite seriously. We were discussing, weren't we, Ben, a possible reaction and a possible joint statement, very much taking the opportunity to work together and respond together, whether that be as churches in Cornwall, as diocesan environment officers and the groups that you represent. You know, obviously that's an example here today. A Rocha and Christian Aid at an organisational level being part of that voice too. So that's something which in question time now, I would really like to possibly bring up as well, the chance for us to collaborate and work on joint statements and joint reactions and joint campaigning together. So It's 11:40. Perhaps if I say, first of all, if you wanted to come off mic, do you have any questions for me? And then could we perhaps put 2 or 3 points together that we think, based on the kind of options I've discussed, is there anything that we could do collaboratively, or anything that I could do as Christian Aid in the Southwest to support you locally over the next 6 to 9 months?
And everybody breathes.
I've got I like the idea of the global oh gosh, the stuff for schools.
Yes, the global neighbours. Thank you,
Yes.
Helen.
So I think the thing to do is to look at the material and to go to the schools with it, and then when we come back, it'd be nice to have, you know, to discuss it with you.
Brilliant. Yes.
Yeah.
I will do that. We've got a team, an education team at Christian Aid, and what I'll do is I'll reply to you personally, Helen, about it, and then I'll share the information with Ben for the wider notices as well for the group about how to get a school engaged in that process and how Christian Aid can support them.
Could I ask what time on Saturday the 12th, please?
Yes, I think the doors will open from 10:15, and the event will begin 10:30 sharp, 10:30 till 1.
I'll be there.
Are you coming, Ben, in person?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll be there. On your bike.
Can I make a comment just about the joint statement, Katrina?
Yes.
Really keen on this idea. I'm very conscious. I'm very much in support of the loss and damage petition, but I'm also very conscious that although that's a justice issue that needs to be resolved, if we don't want the same things to keep happening in these countries again and again and again, and therefore pay out again and again and again, as much as that is great, we need to be campaigning so that it doesn't happen there again. So it's really about the climate. And my frustration on a personal level, but as a minister within churches, is getting the churches more and more on board to sign up to something that becomes public across the nation, to say the churches are standing up for this as much as many of the activists and organisations. And we've got to make it bigger if we're going to change government in a bigger way, a faster way. And I really want to, my reason for wanting to really be here today was to work out how to speak up, not just as an individual, but to gather people together. Is there any way I can sign, first of all, into a joint statement or letter that goes somewhere? And can we encourage more and more ministers and laity to sign it as well and send it off as a kind of global package to because our MP, you know, I've spoken to my MP once since I arrived in Cornwall, and trying to arrange another appointment, but he's not responding this time like he did before. I want to find a way to make it more powerful. Churches don't, you know, we're doing things within our churches, but how do we do it on a wider scale?
Yeah. Yeah, Ben, I'd love your response, and I was just going to echo, really. I can see Anne, but I'm so sorry, sir. What was your name?
My name's Duncan Petty.
Duncan. Thank you, Duncan.
And at the same church.
And just your words, Duncan, were echoed so powerfully by the, we had for Exeter Diocese, the Social Justice and Creation Care Officer, Lydia Peris, and my word, she spoke really eloquently to where is the platform for overall, almost international Christian church voice on this. And quite rightly so, another member of the panel then became irritated, saying this can be interfaith. And luckily I was able to say it is interfaith, and Christian Aid is part of the Climate Coalition, and there is a huge platform for interfaith. But you are right, the church voice, the Christian voice could be so much louder in this. And Ben, did you have any thoughts?
So there's a couple of things rolling at the background which we're trying to draw to life at the moment. One of them probably will. So The first thing is there is something coming together called the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty. So this is similar to that of a nuclear non-proliferation treaty. And there is an urging of dioceses to draw into that at the moment, which is happening. So some dioceses have already signed to it. I'm sure that we will too. We are in a conversation about how to do that and when, but the idea is that we're trying to develop a fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty, which says that is, we understand the impact of fossil fuel and our commitment is to work away from them. There isn't time today because you can look at that from a surface level and a deep level, and there are multiple facets that run off that make it complicated, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. Similarly, when the initial government stance changed around fracking, North Sea oil exports and other things, which has now been largely reverted, which I thank God for. If you're looking for a miracle in everyday life, grab that one. But actually, I do think there would be plenty of room for us as a diocese and then other dioceses to look at something like the Diocese of Truly fully supports the rapid creation and implementation of an international fund for loss and damage, and we urge the government and COP27 to do this without hesitation. It wouldn't be difficult for us to create a statement like that and share it amongst the wider Church of England network of diocesan environment officers and have something fairly rapidly out into the public domain that says we, the Church, do have a voice in this. Loss and damage is a huge issue, I believe. I personally think it's one of the most important things that we as a people of faith can stand behind. It is about injustice. Jesus's whole life on earth was about injustice, and the whole of his purpose and the kingdom of heaven going forward is about the restoration of injustice. So this is a huge thing, I think, on our agenda, and we have an ability to speak up here. The mechanism for doing that, we need a bit more flesh on the bones how we do that. But Katrine has the ability, if we partner with people like Christian Aid, which we do, then we have an ability to do something fairly rapidly with that.
That sounds absolutely wonderful. Yes, David.
I'm thoroughly with everything everybody said. For me, this is a big justice issue. I'm delighted to see that anything which puts the justice element of looking after the environment right at the top of our motivations. Katrina, do you think our combined voice is undermined if ourselves as churches, we aren't committed to net zero until 2030?
You're asking if I think that is an ambitious enough target.
Well, no, I don't think it is ambitious, because this justice issue is so important. This damage to the world and the loss and damage and harm around the world is so bad already that I wonder why we put it off till 2030. It's all very well saying to governments they must contribute to this loss and damage fund if we're not actually net zero ourselves.
No, I think you're 100% right that the two have got to be pursued with absolute integrity, the two goals. But again, I'm not sure if you know the name Robert Weston. Robert Weston is a reverend in Tavistock and in Lavington, and he was a convener for the URC of the Environmental Task Group for a while, and he's a big voice within Eco Church. I think his own church is possibly a gold. And in terms of pursuing those targets, and he just turned to us at the end of Saturday and said, even if we reach net zero, even if we reach our best possible targets on emissions, if we haven't actually set up a loss and damage fund, and if we're not compensating the poorest for the effect on their lives and livelihoods, it's not enough. The two fit together and make a whole. So I guess I I found that so hard hitting for someone who's been pushing and pushing and pushing for the targets to be met. Yes, go on, Ben, was that a raised hand as well?
So the two go hand in hand, don't they?
Absolutely, because for me, net zero is I'm going to probably split the room on this one, but let's just run with it. It's a white Western response. So it's largely about maintaining our wealth and keeping everything as normal. That's the majority of our net zero response. It cannot, that is not a global view. It is not a justice view. The whole view must be reparation as well. So it can't just be response to and change. The change must also include reparation and restoration. If you look at any of Jesus's miracles, they're not about maintaining the status quo. Every single time he acts and moves and speaks and works, there is reparation and restoration. We have to do the same. It's very simple, but it's not very simple. You know. Can
I mention something else on this, which touches on this in a way, is this whole thing of the government reducing the amount they give to aid through the international development thing, which is also partly, in theory, supposed to be used to help some of these things.
Yeah.
In any joint statement, we probably ought to be voicing that, especially as half of the money they are still giving, which is less than the 0.7, is actually going into our own economy to pay for the refugee thing rather than going overseas. And this is part of the whole justice and loss and damage debate. And we need to somehow voice into that. And the other thing, that even the report yesterday talked about how in the last 20 years, the 10% of the population at the bottom end of the income scale, their carbon emissions over 20 years are the same as the top 1% in the last year. We have to do a justice thing at home about the rich, which is your point, Ben, about the world's rich, trying to keep the status quo. So there's a number of levels of this that we need to make statements about as churches, I think.
Really good points, Duncan. Thank you.
There is so much here, friends, and clearly this is something that matters. And it is really difficult sometimes at the church to find the right place, the impetus, the energy, the moment to speak up and respond. But there are avenues here. And I think probably if this is something that you feel collectively, because individually any one of us can sign a petition and respond, but we have the ability to also influence the bishop who has tasked us with setting this up, which is Bishop Hugh. He is utterly on board with this. Let me just say, there is no show here. This is not just a mask he pops on. This is his life. And I say that with real clarity, working closely with him. So if we feel passionately that we should be developing a statement together that comes from us as in this expression as the Church of England in Cornwall, then we can do that. And I know that Hugh would support that.
And once that statement existed, that could be a really meaningful thing to be presenting, couldn't it, to said MP or MPs to get, an element of face-to-face MP time as well, with a really meaningful message.
So just out of interest, quick show of hands, who would support the development of a statement pushing for this creation justice response, loss and damage? Because we are in effect the gathered voice. The Creation Care Network is the gathered voice of our Truro response, our diocesan response. So that seems pretty unanimous to me. So thank you, Lavinia, bless you. I will email after this with Katrina and I will talk, we'll sort out a relatively straightforward statement, talk with Hugh and see how rapidly we can do something and let you know the response to this.
That'd be brilliant. And in your local levels, I will share everything I've used, the People's Prayer, the films, the videos, and anything you can do to amplify this message with others locally would be brilliant. And let me know, if you need support from me or from our press officer, because getting, local media is free advertising for worthwhile causes. So let's try to spread the word about loss and damage and the climate justice elements as much as we can. And I do have a prayer which I was going to draw together with Ben, but should we do AOB first?
I'll do a very quick bit of AOB and then we'll do a prayer. First of all, can we just express our appreciation to Katrine for coming and being with us? So thank you, Katrine. Yes.
Very welcome. Thank you for having me.
So just a few things to highlight. I know we've covered a lot of ground this morning, so rest assured this will all be in the newsletter, and you'll have multiple links you can look at there. Do look at it. Thank you. We are about the most read newsletter in the diocese at the moment, so bless you guys, good work. First off, on the same line as this, Climate Coalition are running something called Letters to Tomorrow. I will include the link for this within the newsletter, but the simple idea is that you can write a letter, dear tomorrow, this is what I hope the world might look like, or dear tomorrow, have we now finally resolved this issue? And the purpose of them is that every single day of the year, one of these letters is sent to 10 Downing Street. One of these letters lands on the doorstep of the PM of this country every single day through the Climate Coalition and is attended to. And it's just a constant feed of, we want to see something different and changed. Low level, very simple, but I think quite powerful. So I'll include that, and that's an ongoing thing, but there's a website, I'll encourage you to have a look at that. Just to reiterate, Saturday the 12th, we're gathering at All Saints Higher Town. I'm really looking forward to that event. It would be great to be well represented. If you can juggle and make that work, draw others together, come and join in the conversation. It would be great to see a great representation of the people of faith in that setting. 5th of November, the bells ring out for climate and COP27. So if you're in a church, there is the national something of bell ringers are encouraging us to ring our bells out as an expression that we are fully running with climate change and want to see a change. That is an excellent question. Rosie, can you answer that one?
It's 5 o'clock, the bells are ringing for 15 to 20 minutes.
The 5th of November, 5 p.m, 15 to 20 minutes. And it's fully endorsed by the National Association of Bell Ringers.
November the Witch. November the Witch.
So they can all start ringing and then the fireworks will start after them.
Yeah.
So, something like that. There are bound to be other things. There's a whole raft of C of E webinars on creation care, energy usage, etc. coming up again. So we'll always include those in the newsletter. And our next gathering is on Thursday, the 1st of December, and Transformation Cornwall, Anne Redelinges is coming to speak to us about how we can partner with Transformation Cornwall on items to do with climate crisis. They're particularly good at helping support with funding, with contacts, with resourcing. So we're really looking forward to welcoming Anne on the 1st of December. Rosie, is there anything else?
No, I think you've covered it. Thank you.
Yes, look at that. I can see you sighing with relief. So, Katrine, would you like to draw us together?
Sorry, can I?
Oh, sorry, Anne. I can see the hand. Sorry.
It's just to ask, do we need to register with All Saints or anything for the 12th?
There is a link there, isn't there, for registration, but I don't know how necessary that is.
Yeah, it's an optional thing. It has got an Eventbrite registration process. If you were to just pop climate justice Truro into Google, it would straight away give you the Eventbrite page to register, but it is by no means essential. We're very, very happy for people to just turn up and come on in on the day.
Right. And is there parking there?
Yes. Go on, Rosie.
Yeah, there's 2 car parks. There's the one along by the road and there's one behind the back in the new housing estate. So yes, there is parking.
Brilliant. Thank you. Sorry.
I'll be driving down the country, so I'll be driving down the diocese. So A39 as a spine, or the A30, I can't remember which one it is, that one. Atlantic Highway. If anybody is near the Atlantic Highway, I've got 4 seats available en route. So email me and I'm sure I can pick you up on the way. Right, pray for us, Katrine. We need it.
God of love, hope and justice, we pray for UK leaders. Bless them with wisdom, boldness and a heart for justice like yours. May you gift them with skills and opportunities required to work in unity with all world leaders, so that a loss and damage fund is created this year. May they act humbly and reproachfully and create a fund that benefits the poorest and most climate vulnerable communities first. And may we all lament for our polluting lifestyles which damage your creation. Amen.
Amen. Well, friends, time has flown. Katrine, thank you so much for inspiring us and sharing with us. And each one of you, thank you so much for inspiring me and each other in all the things that's going on across our diocese and in your communities and churches. God bless you as you keep going with this work. Maggie, we wish you a swift healing and recovery from COVID, and hopefully see as many of you as we can on the 12th. As ever, keep an eye on the website. We're doing some changes to it at the moment. And there's a Facebook page coming. There is a Creation Care Network Facebook group coming, which we can use as a communication channel. It will be a closed group initially, so that you can talk and ask questions and seek resources. It ended up being easier than trying to make a Google group work. But that's where we're headed presently. So bless you guys. Have a great week. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.